Hello, welcome back to block number 2 in our Cuddle Up Sampler Sew Along. Today we are going to be making the snowman block for this quilt. So this cute little guy up here in the top center. I always think this one looks like a little snowman in a snow globe. So I think this will be a lot of fun to break down and sew together with all of you. So grab your Cuddle Up Sampler book and stick around. We are going to begin on page 6 in our Cuddle Up Sampler book. You're going to need to cut out your A through R pieces, which are listed here if you don't have those cut out already. And we're just going to be working our way down through the pattern starting in step 1. Now we are going to be building on some of the techniques that we have talked about in the first video. So if it's something that I chatted about then, for example, flip and stitch corners, I'm not going to spend as much time on those units in this video explaining how I do it, how I like to do it, and those sorts of things, because I am going to imagine that you gathered that information back in the first video. If you are new to this sew along, I do have all of the information linked down below so that you could join in if you want to. This sew along does need the purchase of the Cuddle Up Sampler book to participate in. I am giving a tutorial on how to make the block, but I am not giving measurements in this tutorial, so you do need the book for those measurements. So let's just go ahead and start with step 1. You're going to be grabbing an A piece and a Q piece, which is right here. We have 2 A's and Q over here, 2 Q's. So these are going to be used to make half square triangles, which were units that we made in our Christmas tree block just last time. So if you'll remember, for those, we draw diagonal lines on the back of our lighter squares. They get placed right sides together, just as the illustrations show. We are sewing 1/4 inch away from both of the marked diagonal lines. I have not marked my lines, so if you're looking at this screen thinking, oh, I don't see those lines, that's awfully light, don't worry, your eyes are not deceiving you. I haven't marked those yet. I'll mark those, place them right sides together, and then we sew 1/4 inch away from the line on both sides of that line and make our half square triangles. You're going to see what you need to trim those down to in step 1 as well. Let me go ahead and make my half square triangles, and then we are going to be ready to construct our first block, which is the friendship star block, and that is going to be right at the tippy top of our snowman's hat. My half square triangles are complete. I press them to the dark fabric, which you can see on the back. You will always find the pressing instructions listed throughout the pattern, so just follow the arrows for pressing, just like we did with block 1. We are going to sew our half square triangles with B squares, which I have laid out. In each row, when you press, you'll be pressing toward B. And then when you sew your completed rows together, you are going to press away from the center. Now you might be looking at these little pieces thinking, oh goodness, these are smaller than I would prefer to work with. If that's you, I printed out a mock-up of what this snowman would look like with some simplifications. If you wanted to put a solid square in place of your friendship star block for the snowman hat, you could cut a square of the black star fabric, cut it in the measurement that you see listed in step 2. So the same size that your friendship star would finish at, you could cut a piece of black star fabric in that measurement and substitute that for the top of the snowman hat. The same goes for his little eyes and his buttons. Those are small pieces as well. And if you wanted to substitute those, down here where you see in step number 4, this measurement, you could substitute black star fabric for those, and then the same measurement for these 2 pieces right here in the beige star fabric. That is an easy way to simplify this snowman block if working with those little pieces is a little bit intimidating for you. If you have not worked with smaller pieces, I encourage you to give it a shot. It's either going to go great or it's going to go not as great as you hoped, but the more you piece with small pieces, the more confident you will become, and it might be simpler than you think. It also might go worse than you think. You never know which way it's going to go, but practicing and just giving it a shot is sometimes the best way to go. But I did want to give you that option in case that might not be something you want to try just yet. So I am going to go ahead and sew together my pieces here, and then you're going to see that after we have our friendship star block sewn, in step 3 we are sewing L pieces to each side of that friendship star. So I will do that as soon as I have that star sewn together, and that is going to give me unit 1, and you'll see the measurement for unit 1 in step 3 of your pattern. My unit 1 is complete. I wanted to show you guys something. I ended up spinning my friendship star in the opposite direction as what the pattern will have you spin your star. Either way is fine. You just want to make sure that all of your half square triangles are going in the same direction. If you follow the pattern, you're going to have a star that spins this direction. If you do it the opposite way, you'll have one that goes the opposite direction. So pay attention to your half square triangle orientation when you lay it out, and sew all of your half square triangles in the same direction. It doesn't matter which way your star spins, you just want each piece going the right direction. You wouldn't want this one going this way and then this one going that direction and then this one this way again, because then it's not going to look like a star. So pay attention when you lay those pieces out. But that is unit 1. Whichever way your star spins is just fine. And we are going to move on to the next step. The next thing that we are doing is making the little eye pieces and the little button pieces and nose pieces. And we're going to be doing that here in step 4. It uses F squares, these little guys here, and it uses B squares, which are these right here. We're going to be doing stitch and flip corners on 2 of the corners. So top left and top right will get stitch and flip corners. You'll be drawing your diagonal line, and then 1 corner at a time you will do these. So I'll do the top left first, and then once I have that all trimmed and pressed, then I will repeat on the opposite corner, which you see illustrated here at the bottom of page 6. We are going to be making 5 of these. These units are now complete. The next steps that we're going to want to take are in steps 5, 6, and then step 7. So in step 5, we are taking 2 of those little stitch and flip units, and we are sewing those together with 2 G rectangles and an H rectangle. We're going to take 1 of the units we made and sew I rectangles on either side. Those are our first 2 things we're going to be doing, making those 2 sections. And then after we have those completed, we're going to sew them together in this order. E at the top, section number 1, section number 2, and then E at the bottom. And you see that here in step number 7. So let's get that sewn together. And the snowman's face is starting to take shape. You can see what it looks like so far. The next thing that we're going to be doing is sewing M squares using the stitch and flip method to the 4 corners of this little guy's face. So I have marked a few of these this time, so you can see there we've marked diagonal lines across the back of those. We're going to be using 4 of those, and these get placed on all 4 corners. As always, pay attention to the orientation of the marked lines. You're going to see the way we need to have those oriented every time we have stitch and flip corners in this pattern. So I mentioned that when we were making the Christmas tree block, how important that is to make sure that you have everything going the right direction when you're doing stitch and flip corners, but just another reminder here. So we're going to be doing those stitch and flip corners. I am also going to, let's see, jump ahead just a little bit in my pattern because I want to make these units as well since I'm doing stitch and flip units. These are the same method, same measurements, just swapping the fabrics of what we just did here in step number 4, making these right here. So I am going to grab those. So these use H and C, and we're just making 2 of them. So we are adding the C stitch and flip corners to these. And again, paying attention to that orientation, sewing one side on at a time, pressing and trimming, and then adding that other side. And now this step right here, step number 10, as well as step number 4. These 2 steps are the ones that you could skip if you were opting to simplify the snowman and simply using the squares. To get the squares, you just don't add the stitch and flip corners. You leave the square measurement the same, but you do not add those stitch and flip corners. And then you would be substituting those for those units on his face and for his buttons. I am doing the stitch and flips, so I am going to finish doing these right here. Sew the M squares to his face and then meet you back here. Here is the status of our snowman head now once those flip and stitch corners have been added. The next step is to sew D to the top of this unit. And then we've already done step 10. That is these two pieces right here. And these two were left over from step number 4. So we can also sew together the buttons unit, which you see illustrated in step 11. So let me lay these out here. You're going to alternate those two units like so. And then we can go ahead and sew these all together as well. So I'll sew D to the top here and complete my buttons unit. This is what that unit looks like now. This is what the buttons unit looks like. The next step is to sew J rectangles to either side of the buttons. This is what that buttons unit looks like now after we have sewn J rectangles to either side of it. Our next step is here in step number 13. We are adding M squares using the stitch and flip method. I have already marked my diagonal line across the back of those, and they are going to go on all 4 corners, like so. And I am going to also do stitch and flip units on my K rectangle. You see that happening down here in step number 15. So we'll just do that at the same time also. So that's K and O, stitch and flip units to the 4 corners of K. Now, if I was not doing a tutorial video on this, I would most likely be grabbing all of the stitch and flip units, every step that used stitch and flip units in this snowman block, and I would be doing them all at the same time, just because I like to get those out of the way, because then we can just move through the piecing portion rather than the stitch and flip portion of the instructions. But I will do this one, we'll do this one, and then we'll be ready to keep going. Here's where we're at now. You can really see our snowman block is starting to take shape. I've completed this unit and this unit by adding those stitch and flip corners to the 4 sides of each. And this is always so fun when my alphabetties pile is big and it doesn't have fabrics associated with it anymore. We have just this one little chunk of R that we're going to need, and then we have our N's and our P's that we are going to use right now. We're going to sew together these 2 pieces and then sew N to either side. You'll see that happening in step number 14. And then I am also going to sew my P rectangles to the side of this unit I just completed. So let's get those pieces sewn together. All right, here's where we're at. Our last sections have been sewn together. To complete the block, we will sew these 3 sections together. And then after doing that, we are going to sew our stitch and flips to the 4 corners. Let's get that done and we're gonna have a completed block. And our little snowman block is complete. Now, how many of you noticed my mistake in the last step? I got back up to the sewing machine and I realized that I had sewn my buttons section upside down. You can see what it's supposed to look like here. And I started seam ripping it, and then I thought, you know, I'm just gonna leave it. He is just fine. He's already got his star going the other direction. Now he has his buttons going the other direction too. And I thought maybe some of you needed a little bit of encouragement that as quilt makers, sometimes we are going to sew things just a little bit wrong. Sometimes we decide we're going to seam rip that and put it together the right way. And sometimes, in the case of this snowman, at least for me, I thought it was fine just to leave it just like I sewed it. And that decision is up to you, whether you seam rip it or you leave it and are happy with the finished result. I was thinking, you know, no two snowflakes are the same, so if my snowman is a little bit different than the other snowmen, that is just fine too. So no matter which way your snowman block turns out for you today, I hope you have fun sewing it up. I know I think it's so much fun to sew along with all of you, and it's a lot of fun seeing your blocks start popping up over in the Facebook group. So I hope you have fun sewing up your snowman block. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them for me in the comments below. I'm always happy to answer those. And I will catch you again for our next Cuddle Up Sampler Sew Along block tutorial.